predates, it's ours. In Pakistan and many other areas, we call a lady, whether it is a child, widow, or a married woman, single woman, musammat, short MST, sometimes you write in judgments. So there are a lot of positives which we forget about our own tradition and culture. I'll just begin with the positives of that there are in the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. And I quote from the Constitution, and it says, "Steps shall be taken to ensure full participation of women in all spheres of national life." So this is part of a constitution, and legislation is subordinate to the constitution and must conform with the constitution, cannot conflict with it. There is another fundamental right which can be categorized as affirmative action. That's in Article 25, which says that making any special provision for protection of women. So you can introduce special laws for women's specific, and there are such laws. For instance, in jobs, in government jobs or public sector jobs, you can fix a certain percentage that for women. The same applies in admission to universities, and we have such laws as well. Actually, the men of Pakistan are now complaining that because the women come on the merit seat and they also come on the reserve seats, and invariably they're doing better than the men in educational institutions. It doesn't mean that they cannot come on the merit seats, but there's also a percentage reserved for them, for women, specifically for them. There's also an interesting concept which does not exist in many countries of the world, and that is reserved seats in the National Assembly for women. These are not, it does not mean that only women can come on these seats. Women can be elected on the general seats in the National Assembly. So that is gender neutral. You can be man or woman to contest that election. But then you have certain reserved seats, which is an indirect form of elections through proportional representation. And in the National Assembly, there are 60 such seats, which constitutes about 18%. And the same is reflected. Pakistan is a federation comprising of provinces, and the same is reflected in the 4 provinces. The reserve seat percentage is roughly 22% of the total seats. There are other specific provisions in the constitutions regarding inclusivity and protection. And I quote again from the Constitution: "The state shall protect the marriage, the family, the mother, and the child." This is a constitutional provision. Another one is a fundamental right, is free and compulsory education to all children of the age of 5 to 16 years. As you know, one of the attacks is on women receiving education, and this happens in Pakistan as well as across the border, and it is considered as if the women or girls are not supposed to be educated. It's a fundamental right in our constitution. It's a right which the Almighty not only makes us obligatory on Pakistan being an Islamic Republic. I do quote from the Holy Quran that the first word, that the first revelation came in the form of a directive from the up high, and it was Iqra, read. There is no argument here. It's gender inclusive. It applies to everybody. So there's a great tradition of knowledge. I mean, without that is the very first. I mean, it could have been a number of other directives coming from up high, but the word that was chosen by the Almighty, we believe that the words in the Holy Quran are the words of the Almighty, was to read. And it goes on, the same revelation goes on about the qalam, the pen, teaching. So it's all interconnected. That's the first revelation. Having said that, we have, sadly, when we look across the Muslim world, we have forgotten all of our collective history, a history, a religion without the role of women, there would be no religion. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, the first revelation that he received, he literally ran to his wife, and she was so scared and terrified, and she comforted him. We as Muslims, it's a pillar of our faith to do Hajj once in a lifetime. If you can financially afford it. It was the running of a mother, and every Muslim has to emulate that example of running in the footsteps of the mother, the Sa'i at Makkah, where we literally run in the footsteps of Bibi Hajira, peace be upon her, and her son, the Prophet Ismail, peace be upon him. So these are traditions which we have forgotten. Maryam is the most revered of women, named more so than in the Bible. Chapter of the Quran is named after her. And many of the laws in Pakistan connect religion with the laws in Pakistan. For instance, there is, in the Pakistan Penal Code, these are the offenses that are that various offenses are compiled together in the Pakistan Penal Code, and all offenses, chapter 16, which is against the body, which includes murder, section 338F specifically states that where the language is not clear, you will be guided by the Holy Quran. I said I'll mention the negatives. A negative is what in the West has come to be known as honor killings. Yes, they do take place. Unfortunately, the word honor has been, the word that is used here is ghairat, which has been mistranslated to honor. Actually, it comes closer to arrogance. And arrogance is takabbur. And takabbur is a sin in Islam. Hell, and I quote from the Holy Quran, hell is the abode of the arrogant. This is chapter 16, verse 29, and again on chapter 39, verse 72. So there is this great tradition. We can easily learn from this tradition, and all the more so when it advances inclusivity, when it advances justice for all. There is, for instance, honor killing cases we come across, but there's another concept of a law which does not exist in any I have to be careful with language nowadays, with Western countries, for want of a better phrase, let's put it this way. If you accuse, impute the character of a woman, insinuate something immoral about her, in Islam it is a criminal offense. It's called qazf, and it has also been incorporated into the law of Pakistan, a law sadly which is rarely, if ever, applied. And it's in two laws actually. It's the qazf specific law which mandate a punishment, which is the punishment in the Holy Quran of 80 lashes, and also in section 496 of the Pakistan Penal Code prescribing a punishment of 5 years. Sadly, this is, if I've never come across it being really implemented. So, but we have the opposite thing of adultery, for which that is a completely, it is not only morally wrong, legally wrong, it is also purely, from a purely theological Islamic point of view, it is prohibited, because a punishment for that has been prescribed in the Holy Quran, and you cannot exceed a punishment that has been prescribed, and which is not the punishment of death, which honor killings, which they falsely call honor killings, attract here. The other aspect here is that for the punishment of adultery, the test is so severe, it is almost impossible. Whether loose charge is made against a woman and she's done to death, but if you actually apply the law, which is getting 4 adult witnesses to have seen the act, and if you fail, you get punished for qazf. So irrespective, so it's almost an impossible test to meet, but sadly, honor killings do take place. How do the courts come in? How can they nudge things one way or the other? There is a provision in the Constitution, not in the Constitution, in a law of evidence, Article 122. And the article, if I will, you'll understand what I mean after I've read it. Usually the burden of proof in every criminal trial is upon the prosecution, that's a given. And it has to be proven beyond reasonable doubt. What happens here, it's also connected with honor killings, or killings in the house. I don't know how she died. She is got a bullet wound in her thing, and who are the witnesses? There are no witnesses. All the witnesses are complicit. So the Article 122, when any fact is especially within the knowledge of any person, the burden of proving that fact is upon him. So in a way, the burden of proof shifts. This has been interpreted by the Supreme Court. I cited other precedents also, but the point was really made. And I just read a bit from that judgment, that with, quote, that with regard to vulnerable members of society, such as children, women, and the infirm, who are living with the accused or were last in his company, the accused ought to offer some explanation of what happened to them. If instead he remains silent or offers a false explanation, he casts a shadow upon himself. So this helps in bringing the perpetrators of these kind of crimes against women to be made accountable. So this is how criminal law judges can interpret existing legislation to fulfill not only the laws of Pakistan, but the laws of the Almighty. Let me clear up a few misgivings also. Generally, and most Muslims are guilty of the same misunderstanding, is the evidence of a woman is half that of a man. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Quranic verse is there to protect the interest of women. So you enter into agreement with a lady and she doesn't quite understand what she's giving away with future financial transaction, and she gets stuck. The other verse, which nobody really refers to, it again connects with an allegation of adultery by a husband or a wife, by a husband against the wife, and there are no witnesses. So here the testimony of the wife has precedence over that of the husband, and this is Lian, and it is the chapter of the light, Surah An-Nur, 24th chapter of the Quran, verses 4 to 10. It is literally, he accuses her and he swears, and the wrath of the Almighty will be upon him if he lies. She swears and she does the same thing and he does the same thing, and the final one is the woman's say. So its testimony precedence is taken here of the testimony of women. The other aspect is another negative in our society is the law of inheritance, which is very clear cut. It's specified, shares are specified. You don't have to really think. These cases should take literally 5 minutes to decide and dispose of. Should never see the Supreme Court, let alone even the High Court. But the male members of society deprive ladies of their Quranic shares, which in addition to breaking the laws of Pakistan is a sin. And the matter takes forever to come to the Supreme Court. And because there's no downside, you keep the lady involved in litigation, and even if she ultimately wins, you will have had the benefit of the property for a considerable period of time. So what the judges can do, impose very heavy costs in this kind of frivolous litigation, or just before death of a father or a mother from whom one inherits comes this false gift that actually just before his death, the son comes forward and says, the property was gifted to me. Another device used to deprive women, and endless court are spent on this. And if the courts were very severe on not only costs, but on the applying the standard of proof, matters would get resolved very quickly. So matters, there are many such cases, and I can go on. While there are positives, but there are also negatives. So these are the devices that one come and use, because the Constitution, I don't think there is any fault in the Constitution. The laws are also pretty all right. It is the application of the laws, and here the courts come in, and all of us come in, and how you apply the laws and how do they get a particular result. Another aspect is societal, which judges can't change, society changes. The founder of the nation, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who we lovingly refer to as Qaid-e-Azam, the great leader, always because his marriage didn't last, his sister went with him everywhere. He ensured that in the highest body of the All India Muslim League, there was a lady, you've seen in the photographs, and that tradition, unfortunately, is waning, and we don't see men who are in office accompanied by wives. This also has a very positive effect, in my opinion. So if we project, that is something which we can easily redress and resolve, all of us. And so I will just conclude by clarifying that I was given a lot of thanks, but the actual person who deserves the thanks is Justice Mansoor Ali Shah, who has not only made this possible, who has also not made this possible, but is in charge of the Federal Judicial Academy, and from a more or less dormant organization has brought it to life. Thank you very much.
Chief Justice चीफ जस्टिस काजी फ़ायज़ ईसा ख़िताब कर रहे थे। आपने तकरीर करते हुए कहा कि इंसाफ के बगैर कोई मुआशरा तरक्की नहीं कर सकता। हर शोबे में ख़वातीन की नुमाइंदगी ज़रूरी है। असम्बली में कई ख़वातीन की कारकर्दगी मर्दों से बेहतर है। हमारे माशरे में मर्द औरतों को उनकी विरासत से महरूम रखते हैं। विरासत के केसों में ज़्यादा वक्त नहीं लगता, फ़ैसला जल्दी सुना दिया जाता है। इंसाफ के बगैर कोई माशरा तरक्की नहीं कर सकता। ख़वातीन मुख्तलिफ़ शोबों में अहम किरदार अदा कर रही हैं, ऐसा कहना था चीफ जस्टिस काजी फ़ायज़ ईसा का। इंसाफ के बगैर कोई माशरा तरक्की नहीं कर सकता। असम्बली में कई ख़वातीन की कारकर्दगी मर्दों से बेहतर होती है, ऐसा कहना था चीफ जस्टिस काजी फ़ायज़ ईसा का। मज़ीद आपने कहा कि हर शोबे में ख़वातीन की नुमाइंदगी बहुत ज़रूरी है।